by members of the press. Of course, in our democracy, a free and a robust press is very important, and we try to do our part to interact with the members of the press on a monthly basis. I am pleased to be back here, and I start, regrettably on a sad note today, to express some condolences to the family and friends of the late Arthur Evelyn, who died on Friday, the 13th of August, 2021, and was laid to rest on Monday, the 2nd of August, last Monday at 2 p.m. at an official funeral, which was held for him at the El Camino Willett Park. He was laid to rest at the Bath Cemetery with military honors. I believe all of us are aware that Mr. Evelyn served with distinction as a businessman, as a pioneer in credit unionism, as a pioneer working with various agencies here on the island of Nevis. He was one who was instrumental in our largest sporting event here in the Federation, that is the Inter-Primary Championships. And he has, in fact, contributed tremendously to the life and times of this island. He served as a Minister of Government as well. And so, to the family, we would want to extend our ongoing condolences to them and to let them know that the contribution of Mr. Arthur Evelyn will never be forgotten. While I'm in that mood, let me also express condolences to Mr. George Wilkinson, known to us all as Colopy. He may not have been a national figure, but he certainly was one who was well known in the Brown Hill community and one who was well known throughout Nevis. I would want to extend my condolences to his wife Lizzie, his children, and his grandchildren. I remember especially the Honorable John L. Powell and, of course, Miss Nadine Carty-Keynes, who works with us in the Ministry of Health, and to extend my very deepest condolences to the entire Brownhill family and friends of Mr. George Wilkinson, also known to us all as Colopy. Let me move then from that sad note to a note of congratulations. I will start by congratulating Miss Tony Nisbet, who placed second in the bikini fitness class Inter-Island Championship held in French St. Martin on the 31st July. I believe that she has continued in that particular sport to do well, and we are definitely appreciative of her efforts. Let me also congratulate Nevisian cricketers Onaje Amre, Anderson Amadan, Jaden Carmichael, and Carlin Bowen-Tuckett, who all made it to the West Indies Under-19 26-member training squad that is currently in Antigua preparing for a tour of the United Kingdom in September. The four were part of the initial training squad that was engaged in trial matches, but then made it to the 26-member training squad. Acadianto Willett also took part in the trial matches. We wish the young cricketers well and hope they will all make it to the final 18 that will be named shortly. As our young people in Nevis continue to show their potential, congratulations are also extended to Kenya Virgo, Adelisi Gracia, Angenique Newton, and Brianna Miranda, who made it to the Under-14 national football female team, as well as Jamal Lewis and Chris Brown, who are part of the Under-15 national football male team. The teams are currently in the Dominican Republic, participating in the Caribbean Football Union tournament, which started on August 22nd and will end on August 30th. Miss Ulinda Warner and Mr. Leroy Paris, both of Nevis, are two of the officials who are also in the Dominican Republic for the tournament. And so we not only have players in the female team, players in the male team, but officials from Nevis who are participating, and we congratulate them all. Congratulations are also in order for another Nevisian, Mr. Winston Crook, who is currently in Japan and will be officiating at the Tokyo 2020 Summer Paralympics. The Games, being hosted between August 24th and September 5th, is a major international multi-sport event for athletes with disabilities. The Games will feature 539 events across 22 sporting disciplines at 21 venues. Winston, who is one among only two officials from the entire Caribbean region, will officiate at events on August 28th and 29th. Let me also express my warm appreciation to Ms. Terry Andrews and international swim instructor Anne McLindon for developing the Swim to Win initiative. The first ever Christina Memorial Swimming Camp was held from July 19th to 30th and was a tremendous success. 16 instructors, as well as close to 100 students, benefited and were able to learn the art of swimming. The camp, which is part of the Swim to Win program, was coordinated by the Department of Sports and mainly funded by the Nevis Island Administration. This was a pledge that was made. You will recall that we had a special sitting of the Nevis Island Assembly to mark the 50th anniversary of the Christina disaster. And we are all aware that many people perished on that day because they could not swim. And that despite the fact that we are surrounded by ocean, many of our people to this day still cannot swim. And so we decided and made a pledge then that we will seek to expose as many Nevisians as possible to the art form, in fact, the sport of swimming. And it is to that end that we have engaged, and as I reported, 100 students and 16 instructors all benefited. The value of the instructors, of course, is that they will be able to continue annually this particular program. And for me, I was there at the closing. It was tremendous to see the joy on the faces of these youngsters as, in fact, they learned to swim. Let me, while I'm in congratulatory mode, also highlight the fact that 3 distinguished Nevisians were among 8 persons who were formally invested with Queen Elizabeth II New Year's honors at the investiture ceremony at Government House on St. Kitts on August 19th. Our beloved Deputy Governor General, Her Honor Mrs. Hailita Liebert, she received the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for her contribution in public service. Mr. Colin Tyrrell received the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, MBE, for his contribution to community service. And our own Mr. Hilroy Brandy, Commissioner of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force, received the Queen's Police Medal, QPM, for his contribution to policing and leadership. We join all Nevisians, in fact, we join all nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis in expressing our joy at the well-deserved recognition of these outstanding Nevisians. Let me also congratulate our National Honors Awardees. Dr. Judy Nisbet, who heads our task force here on the island of Nevis, our COVID-19 task force, and Mr. Brian Dyer, who's also a member of that task force, but also heads our disaster response team. And Dr. Linton Liebert, a medical doctor of much renown here on the island. All would have received national honors at this year's investiture ceremony, and we congratulate them all. I have taken the time, as I do when I come monthly, to highlight Nevisians that are doing well. And I believe that all of these individuals provide an inspiration to the rest of us to continue to work hard and to seek to achieve. I pass on from the congratulations now to advise the general public that the movie industry that we have sought to pioneer here on the island of Nevis, and that has in the past 7 months produced thus far 3 movies, 1 Year Off, Assailant, and A Week in Paradise. I'm advised and can advise the public that all 3 movies have been successfully sold to distributors, and all 3 movies therefore should be on our screens in short order. I look forward to the moment when all of Nevis, those at home and those abroad, and all of St. Kitts, because so many Kittitians are featured in these movies as well, and locations on St. Kitts are featured in these movies, that all of us as a federation can look at our screens, look at Netflix, look at Amazon, look at whatever streaming service, and see our people and our island and our country displayed in glorious color. What they say? Technicolor. It will be, I believe, an amazing experience for us all. And I can hear the voices now as people try to decipher and figure out who's that in the background, who's that speaking, as we well and truly enter the movie business. The producers, MSR Media, and Mr. Philip Martinez, they would have taken a break from Nevis. They went off because they were doing another film in the United Kingdom. I'm happy to report that they're now back on Nevis and ready to go. Mr. Martinez is out of quarantine. He has advised that they will shortly, within the next month, start filming their 4th movie here, and this one will be called Christmas in the Caribbean. And so, we look forward to this continuing partnership with MSR Media, with Mr. Martinez, and indeed with others, as we try to develop this film industry. If you hear me sounding a little proud, it's because I am. Because this is an example of taking and making something from nothing. This was an idea a mere 7 months ago. And already we have 3 feature films produced here and another which is due to start shooting soon. If this process continues, we believe that the island of Nevis can become an epicenter of film production right here in the Caribbean and perhaps in the world. I was particularly pleased to see in recent articles in the trades, as I'm told it's called in this particular industry, that Nevis is now being mentioned alongside Dominican Republic, alongside Puerto Rico, as filming destinations in the Caribbean. The fact that we are only in it for 7 months and already being mentioned with those big names in film is, to me, a mark of great success. Indeed, I had conversations recently with some individuals who are interested in doing some filming and production work here on the island, and they tell me that they've been seeing the name Nevis popping up all across the trades in Hollywood, and wherever movies are being made, the name Nevis is popping up. I feel that all of us should be proud. I feel that as a government, we have, despite the difficulties of COVID-19, despite the problems that we've encountered, we've not stood still. And we've continued to make every effort to create something to generate activity here on the island of Nevis. So I welcome back MSR Media. I welcome back Mr. Martinez. And certainly I know that those in Nevis who have caught the bug, whether it's the acting bug or the film bug, because so many Nevisians are now involved. In fact, I was advised that a few of our own Nevisians have already been promoted in the organization. And so some are in charge of various areas of what they're doing. I can, for example, mention Mr. Vaughan Anslin, who is now the manager for the entire art department. And so we are seeing Nevisians being exposed to filmmaking, editing, lighting, sound, and of course for the Acting Academy to acting as well. And so we welcome them, and we feel that we are really on to something good, and we continue to encourage their participation in the economic tapestry of the island of Nevis. Members of the press, you will have heard me from time to time talk about security on the island and the need for us to not take our eyes off this situation on Nevis in relation to our security. It is for me a matter of great achievement and pride that in the past several months, indeed I would say in the past year or more, members of the press have not been overly preoccupied with asking me questions about crime. If you were to cast your mind back just perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, we recognize that this was uppermost in most people's minds and certainly uppermost in the press. It is through the grace of God and the efforts of many that today we are in an environment of low crime, particularly violent crime. And whilst, of course, we cannot control it in the sense that crime is something often flowing from emotion and passion, something that can happen at any moment, I believe that the statistics suggest that we are going and moving in the right direction. And so I continue to applaud our men and women in uniform, our Commissioner, Hilroy Brandy, and his team, our superintendent here in Nevis, Superintendent Sutton, and his team, and of course the Prime Minister as Minister of National Security for his efforts and the efforts of those of us here in Nevis, including the prominent Secretary in the Premier's Ministry, Mr. Wakely Daniel, who engages on my behalf with the police and the security forces on a daily basis. While security is not a line budget item for the Nevis Island Administration, I can say publicly that the evidence suggests that the NIA continues to find resources from its meager purse to support our police. We have a contingent of Army officers who have been with us assisting, and we have been responsible for their upkeep, their food, etc., their housing. We have as we well know, through successive administrations, contributed to vehicles for the police, contributed to the building of police stations, the most recent of which is the Newcastle police station, which some have described as a five-star hotel facility there in Newcastle. So we have well and truly been partners with the police, with the security forces. And I'm pleased, therefore, members of the press, to advise that on the 31st of August, in just a few days, we will have the opening of the state-of-the-art facility, CCTV, closed-circuit television facility there in Charlestown. We have always said that we cannot rely only on the old-time type of policing. That while officers on the beat and officers in the community, whilst that is important, and we must continue the community policing efforts, that we must also now deploy technology. And I have said about cameras, the beauty about them is they don't sleep, they don't require time off, they don't require vacation. Once they are serviced, they are there, and they continue to provide comfort to us, security, not only to detect crime, but what we hope would be also to deter crime, because we would like to prevent crime from happening before it happens. I have seen the technology. I can say that the technology is impressive. We have license plate recognition software. We have the ability to look at our screens, and for some of you who have watched these movies and television reports and seen the situation rooms in major police and security installations around the world, this will be very similar, where we have monitored the area, and we hope in the fullness of time to roll that out and make it island-wide. So I'm very happy that after some time and some delay, we are finally in a position where we can have the official opening of this center, which is already in operation, but we simply now would want to have an official opening. So the 31st of August is the day, and I believe, members of the press, that it is a good day for the island of Nevis and the wider Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis in making this happen. Now, let me move on very quickly. I believe that it is no secret that our country has been beset by COVID-19. We have had a difficulty with this pandemic and this disease from the inception. But whilst we were able for the first 14 months or so, certainly up to May 18th of this year, kept tight control, I believe that after May 18th, all would agree that the numbers started to go out of control. We have tried every means, lockdowns, mask mandates, curfews, restrictions of different kinds, quarantine. We have sought in every way to keep our people safe. And the non-pharmaceutical measures have now been augmented with the pharmaceutical measure, which is the vaccine. Our government has secured the AstraZeneca vaccine for our people, and now we have also secured, through diplomatic efforts, the Fisa vaccine from the United States, and we continue to thank the United States of America for their generosity, and the Biden administration for its generosity in making vaccines available to all of our CARICOM countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I have continued at every opportunity to implore our people to get vaccinated and to better protect themselves, to continue to wear their masks in public spaces, and to maintain the requisite spatial distance, the physical distancing when in public. We have asked people to continue to wash their hands and to sanitize. Most importantly, I have continued to ask our people to vaccinate. I've asked our people to take personal responsibility. Many, of course, have advocated that they have a choice, and obviously they do. But I'm asking, when you think of that choice, to think of who your choice might also affect, because it is not just you. We are dealing with a highly contagious and highly dangerous disease. We have now the Pfizer vaccine, which is available. The Prime Minister has announced that as of September 1st, we will start to administer this vaccine. And the good news is that this vaccine has now had full approval from the Food and Drug Administration in the United States of America. And so some who were hesitant, who were saying that the vaccine had only been approved for emergency use, the vaccine has now been approved by a major regulatory agency, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, in the United States for official use. It's no longer just an emergency use. It has been fully approved. It has been approved for those who are 16 years and up, and the recommendation is that it can also be used for those who are 12 years old and up. What this does, ladies and gentlemen of the press, it allows St. Kitts and Nevis now to offer the vaccine to all of our high school students. Certainly, this can only be done with the consent of the parents, but they, who are a large cohort of individuals in our country, will now have the capacity to be vaccinated. I believe that this is an important step forward. Whereas we could not use the AstraZeneca vaccine for this purpose, we can now use a fully approved FDA vaccine, the Fisa vaccine, to allow our youth, our teenagers, our high schoolers to be vaccinated. Of course, there is still at this point no vaccine available for those who are below 12. And so that group, those in our preschools and those in our primary schools, remain vulnerable. I am therefore urging their caretakers, those who take care of our children in the preschools and the nurseries, those who have the babysitting businesses that take care of people's children, those who teach, and the non-teaching staff in our primary schools. I'm urging them to get vaccinated. I am sure, as a parent myself, that none of you members of the press who are parents, and nobody out there who's listening or viewing this press conference would be pleased if their toddler or infant is taken by them to the babysitter or to the nursery or to the preschool and were to return home with COVID-19. Bearing in mind, as I've said, that there is no vaccine that is available to this group, it means therefore that that group remains the most vulnerable. And it therefore is the responsible thing to do for those who are taking care of them to ensure that those children have a safe environment. I use the example elsewhere of a large school like the Charlestown Primary School and the risks of COVID getting into a school like that and what that would mean for that school, for the education system for the island of Nevis. And therefore we continue to urge our teachers to get vaccinated because they have in their care our most valuable resource, our youth. I do not believe I can say much more on that, except to say that in St. Kitts, we have observed that some nurseries over there have had to close. Here, on the island of Nevis, we have not yet had that, and we hope we don't. On St. Kitts, we have heard reports of some positive cases at the Cardin home for the aged. Here on Nevis, we have cases of staff reporting and testing positive at our Flamboyant home. Now, who's at the Cardin home? Our elderly. Who's at the Flamboyant home? Our elderly. Our elderly remain, like our children, among the most vulnerable. Because, as we all understand, when we are older, our body doesn't have the capacity to fight as younger persons would ordinarily have. And so again, we are urging those who have vulnerable people in their care to do the right thing and to vaccinate, to ensure that our people have the best chance, a fighting chance against the COVID-19 disease, the COVID-19 virus. And so I continue to urge our nursing community, our caretakers, those who are taking care of our elderly in their homes and at the Flamboyant homes and the Cardin home and various institutions. I continue to urge those who are taking care of our children, our infants, that they go and they get vaccinated and ensure that they act responsibly. And I believe that these people are all well-intentioned. I believe that we all have something called a conscience. And I do not believe that anyone would be happy to know that they took COVID-19 and gave it to the elderly person who's in their care, or to that infant who's in their care. Now, let me move to the statistics, specifically for the island of Nevis. These statistics that I received initially were as of 4 p.m. yesterday, and I will update as I go. The number of persons tested since the start of the pandemic on the island of Nevis, 5,582 COVID tests have been performed in Nevis. Of those, some 90 have been positive, and we've now added. So as of today, remember I said initially that that was as of yesterday. So as of today, some 101 have tested positive. 101. We have had 22 recoveries, and therefore we have now 79 active cases on the island of Nevis. I would hasten to point out, members of the press, that these 79 active cases have really all come about since late June and early August. This really has been a 2.5-month experience for the island of Nevis. And when you compare that to the 14 months from March of 2020 until May, June of 2021, when we had on the island of Nevis only, I believe, 24 cases. It speaks volumes to how many cases we have had in a very short time. I confess that when Dr. Nisbet called me one night and said we had 19 positive cases, I thought that she had misspoke. I couldn't imagine Nevis would have had 19 cases. And then 13. And then 9. Now 13 again. We see the numbers increasing exponentially. When 3 persons, we have, let me just report, forgive me, that we still have 100 tests that are pending. And therefore, we're still waiting on results. We have had, praise be to God, no deaths. On my way here, I was advised that regrettably, we now have 1 hospitalization due to COVID here on Nevis. This would be our first hospitalization, and we pray that this individual who's in hospital, that individual may have a speedy recovery. Clearly, ladies and gentlemen, if the number of cases continues to increase, if the number of persons who are positive continue, if that continues to rise, then it means that the risks to all of us of being infected, and of course for those who are vulnerable, being hospitalized, and worse yet, dying, are increased. And that is why, as a government, we continue to urge our people to be responsible. And being responsible does not only mean taking the vaccine. Being responsible also means acting responsibly, avoiding crowds if you can, seeking not to go to the bars. I said in a different place that if it is you like to take a little drink now and again, you could do it at home. The drink doesn't get any sweeter, and it doesn't last any longer if you do it in a crowd or at a bar. It's the same drink. Do it at home. Wear your mask when in public. Distance yourself as much as you can from others. We know that the virus requires the human body to be transmitted. And so we continue to say to our people to do the right thing. One young man said to me that nobody's dying, and so he's going to take his chance with the virus. Perhaps he might be the one who's the unlucky one. None of us would want to be that unlucky one. So I continue to urge. We had 3 persons from an establishment who tested positive between August 14th to 16th. It was suspected that there may be a cluster of positive cases at that organization. The establishment was closed by our authorities, and all remaining employees were quarantined and tested. A total of 73 tests were done between August 14th and 18th, and that yielded 18 positive cases, with 55 persons being negative. All cases were isolated and contact tracing commenced immediately. 59 contacts of the positive cases were identified, of which 17 are positive. Therefore, there are 35 cases that can be directly linked to a single establishment on the island of Nevis. And that establishment is now closed. I want to pause there for a moment so that you can reflect that individuals who contracted this virus at this establishment, in one case, some people who are near and dear to me, my constituents. The husband went home, infected his wife, infected his 2 young children. All 4 have now been placed in isolation. That from that one establishment, 35 cases can be traced. And now think about the economic damage, because that establishment has now to have been closed. And so, no work, no business. The damage, therefore, is to lives, it's to health, and it's also to livelihoods. Since this outbreak started, a number of persons with no identified link to that establishment have presented for testing at our hospital and at our field facility, which we have set up over at the disaster preparedness in Long Point. 48 have tested positive. Additionally, we have 2 inbound passengers who have tested positive since August 14th, 2 imported cases. The ages, and members of the press, I think this is important. The ages of the positive cases range from 18 months, an 18-month-old baby, to 66 years. From 18-month-old to 66 years old. We now have 1 hospitalization, as I reported earlier, and praise be to God, at this point, we have no deaths. The summary, therefore, from August 14th, which is really when we saw massive community spread on the island of Nevis. The number of persons tested since August 14th, 580. The number of persons negative, 412. Number of persons positive, 68. Number of active cases as of yesterday would have been 68. Today, we update that and we say 79 as of today. We still have 100 tests pending, and the local spread, number of cases due to local spread, remains at 77, with 2 cases imported and 1 hospitalization. Now, an important statistic. Of the 68, I'm sorry that my statistics are being presented the way they are, but we have updated the number from yesterday. So we now know that we have 79 active cases on Nevis, and we have 101 cases total since the start of the pandemic. But the statistic I'm now going to give you is the position as of yesterday. And as of yesterday, we had 68 positive cases. Of those 68, as of yesterday, we had 49 of those were not vaccinated, and 19 were vaccinated. So, of the 68 cases yesterday, you had 49 that were not vaccinated, and 19 were vaccinated. I do not have that breakdown for the 11 that were reported for today. So that's why I'm asking you to forgive me, because we could not get that number in time. But as of yesterday, 68 cases, 49 were not vaccinated, 19 were vaccinated. I believe that that statistic is important. It is important because it shows, yet again, that the science is holding true. And that whilst the scientists and the doctors have always said that those who are vaccinated can still get COVID, they have made it clear that your risk of getting COVID is considerably less than those who are not vaccinated. And here, of the 68 cases as of yesterday afternoon, the vast majority, over 70%, were not vaccinated. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, when the media says that COVID-19 is now the disease of the unvaccinated, I believe that the numbers bear that out. Of the 11 cases, let me update you now, that we were able to detect, and I report that that has brought our active case total to 79 and our total cases since the start of the pandemic to 101. Of those cases, 11 had been identified yesterday and 3 the day before. So that brought the 14, and that 14 brought us to a global total of 79. Of the 11 cases identified yesterday, 8 were adults and 3 were children. 8 were adults and 3 were children. Thus far, therefore, we have had 12 children from as low as 18 months, an infant as low as 18 months, who have been infected with the COVID-19 virus on the island of Nevis. And I believe that that is important, because if I believe all of us are committed to protecting our children, we recognize that COVID is not a respecter of age, it is not a respecter of children. In fact, children are the most vulnerable because they, at this point, are not vaccinated. And if you have an 18-month child, again, I don't know about you, but I would be quite distraught to know that my 18-month-old baby was infected with this horrible disease. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is there, and the evidence is clear. It is for us to determine whether or not we want to assume that risk for ourselves, our families, and to pass that risk to the people we work with and to the people that are in our charge, such as the elderly and the young. I'm advised that an entire government department on the island of Nevis has had to be closed because members in that department have tested positive for COVID. I'm advised that members of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force based on Nevis have had now to be isolated because some have tested for COVID. And I want you to imagine for the moment with me of what Nevis would look like if we have to close the Charlestown police station, if you have to close the barracks which house our men and women in uniform. Imagine what it would look like if at our major primary schools there's an outbreak. Imagine what it would look like if at our only hospital there is an outbreak. So when we talk about COVID-19 and we talk about the risks, many people seem to treat it as irrelevant. It was not very important to them. But imagine a Nevis where your loved one requires emergency care. You're calling the ambulance. Your loved one has collapsed at home. Your child is sick, and you hear the hospital closed because COVID outbreak at the hospital. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm saying that these are the realities. These are the realities, and they're staring us dead in our face. And it is high time that as a people who are caring, who are intelligent, that we step up and we do what we know to be right to protect ourselves and protect our loved ones and to protect others. If I can move to the vaccination effort on Nevis, as of August 25th, we had vaccinated 5,498 persons had had their first dose of the AstraZeneca. That represents 64% of our target population. 5,022 persons have received both doses. That represents 58.5% of our target population. And 41% of our global or total population have now been fully vaccinated. Bear in mind that when I said target population, we were talking about those over 18. Because prior to the Pfizer's arrival, we did not have a vaccine for those who are under 18. And now we do. Fully approved, FDA-approved vaccine in Pfizer, which we hope we can use for those who are under 18, those who are 12 and above. And I am imploring parents to let their children get vaccinated and be protected. And so today my appeal is to everybody, but I've singled out our teachers. I've singled out our nursing and health staff who are on the front line. I've singled out our police. I've singled out those who are taking care of our children in nurseries and daycares around the island. I've singled out those who are caring for our elderly. And I'm saying that those of you who are in those positions are in particularly vulnerable and dangerous jobs where any negligence or recklessness or irresponsibility on your part can lead to someone's 18-month-old child or someone's 80-year-old grandmother contracting this terrible virus. And so, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, it is in our hands now. The government, I believe, has done what it can. We have educated, we have cajoled, we have encouraged, we have begged and beseeched. We have secured vaccines, the AstraZeneca. Some say we don't want that. So, we have also secured Pfizer. Some said that wasn't approved only for emergency use. Well, it is now fully approved by the FDA. And so we urge our people to do the right thing and to act responsibly. As the government, we continue to invest. We continue to go out there and to seek to meet this challenge head on. I'm very pleased, members of the press, to report that Nevis now has its own PCR testing equipment. That equipment has arrived on island through the generous donation of the Jahi Foundation, and that is the first of 2 pieces of such equipment that we expect to have on the island of Nevis. Why is that important? It is important because all of the experts seem to agree that we will have to deal with COVID-19 for some time yet. And we on Nevis have realized that we have delays sometimes, we have difficulties sometimes because all the testing had to go over to our sister island of St. Kitts. And so getting our own equipment at our own lab at the Alexandra Hospital means that we will now be able to provide more rapid results for our people and to continue to test as many people as possible. I think all the experts are agreed that testing is going to be a critical part of the response to COVID-19 going forward. And so I'm very proud today to announce that through the efforts of our Ministry of Health, I want to commend Madam Minister Hazel Brandy Williams. I want to commend her Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Shalisa Martin Clark. I want to commend the entire team and to thank the Jahi Foundation for this very generous donation of the necessary equipment to do PCR testing on Nevis. I should also add that we expect a second machine that is to come through the generosity of the Japanese government, and that particular machine that I would have reported on some weeks ago, that we expect that to arrive shortly, and that again was due to the Herculean efforts of PS Shalisa Martin Clark. And so I commend them. These are public servants who are continuing to do their very best in difficult circumstances for the protection of our island and our people. Testing in Nevis, we hope, will allow us to lower the cost, will allow us to respond more rapidly, and will put us in a far better position on the island to fight together with our counterparts on St. Kitts this pandemic. Just yesterday, in our weekly meeting of the Nevis Cabinet, we would have approved the hiring of 2 specially trained lab technicians who are already here and will join our lab and who have specific technical expertise in relation to PCR testing and COVID testing. And so we are hopeful that we can get this dealt with quickly and that the people of Nevis will be the beneficiaries. So I believe that's, I hope, a headline that we can use in terms of progress in relation to the fight against COVID-19. Ladies and gentlemen, just very quickly before I close off and allow some questions, the Pinnis Park, which as you know is a signature project of this government. Work on that park continues apace. Construction is now 79.45% complete. The glass dome on the visitor center has been installed and work has begun on the interior spaces which will house offices and meeting rooms. Finishing touches are being done to the outdoor bathrooms, the commercial spaces, as well as the lawn amphitheater. Work has begun on the parking lot facing the Island Main Road, and landscaping now stands at 66.83%. Please don't ask me how we get the point. I'm just telling you the information that was given to me. So the construction is at 79.45% and the landscaping at 66.83%. Our target opening date is Wednesday, the 15th of December, 2021. And on that day, we also hope to have a very significant trade fair happening at the Pinnis Park. We will shortly be announcing a Pinnis Park manager who will be the individual charged with leading the efforts there at that institution and the management of that institution going forward. I've also been asked through the Ministry of Tourism to announce that the Nevis Garden Competition is now open again for the public, and we have extended the deadline for registration to Thursday, the 30th of September. Persons are invited to enter their gardens in the household or business institution categories, and participants may enter vegetable gardens or flower ornamental gardens in the competition. There are many attractive prizes to be won, including gardening tools, farming supplies, seeds, seedlings, and grow boxes. And this competition is a collaborative effort of the Ministry of Tourism, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Gender Affairs. In terms of additional updates from the Ministry of Health, we wish to recognize that adequate nurse staffing remains one of our main challenges here on the island of Nevis. I know that jobs are tight. The reason for that, of course, is obvious. We've had a downturn in our economy due to COVID, and one of our significant industries, tourism, has all but shut down. I therefore know that there are many young people out there who are looking for something to do. I am urging you to consider nursing. It is a noble profession. It is one that the island needs, and the government of Nevis continues to offer full scholarship assistance to those seeking to pursue nursing at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College on St. Kitts. We are urging you, if you're out there, you're hearing me, we're appealing to you to come forward and enter the nursing fraternity. We have been forced to encourage retired nurses, many of whom have given decades of service already and who are entitled to enjoy their retirement years. We have been forced to encourage so many of them to come back into the service. We have been forced to go as far as the Philippines to hire nurses. We have gone to our sister Caribbean nation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to hire nurses. And so we are saying to our own people that there's an opportunity here to enter the nursing profession, and the government is prepared to provide assistance to allow you to achieve that goal. We have recently welcomed 3 local nurses to our team last month, and today we also recruited Nurse Ishanda Jacobs, who I'm told is from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I hope I got that right, but who has come to us from Antigua. And so we welcome Nurse Jacobs, and we welcome the others who have joined us, and we encourage youngsters out there to think about nursing as a profession, to have something to do that is worthwhile and that makes a significant contribution to the island of Nevis. The Cuban medical team deployed to Nevis to assist the COVID-19 response departed the Federation on August 6th and 8th. The 6-member team spent 16 months working alongside our health professionals, providing care to our people. Dr. Ana Maria Acuna, the OBGYN attached to our district services, also returned to Cuba after 5 years serving here on the island of Nevis. We continue to thank the government and people of Cuba, who through diplomatic relations have provided us with medical professionals over the years. And I will pause for a moment members of the press, just to say that Cuba was equally affected and afflicted by COVID. But yet Cuba found its way able to provide assistance to the rest of us. And may we all, as a people, continue to say thank you to the government and people of Cuba for their generosity and their philanthropy. We, of course, continue to urge our people to practice all the protocols to remain safe as we deal with this upsurge in COVID-19. I'm shortly to finish. Let me just move quickly to Culturama. We've had a lot of questions. And I just want to advise that in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and the increase in cases, all Culturama activities now will be virtual. We had anticipated having some audience attendance at these events, but we have moved now to a virtual edition. We have been cleared by the COVID-19 task force to stage a scaled-down version of Culturama 47 in September. And the official dates, therefore, is September 16th to September 20th. On September 16th, there's something called the Culture Pot. That will be at the David Freeman Center of Excellence right there in the heart of Gingerland. That beautiful facility that was put there and opened by the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who continues to do marvelous work in the area of culture. On Friday, the September 17th, we have Poets in the Square and the Soca Monarch Finals. Poets in the Square will be at the War Memorial Square, and the Soca Monarch Finals will be at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. Saturday, September 18th, we have Nevis Heritage Day at the Heritage Village Fothergills, and we have the Senior Kaiso Finals. Sunday, September 19th, we have the Fashion Expo at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. Monday, September 20th, we have the Exposition St. George dramatic presentation at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. Forgive me. We have the Exposition St. George at the David Freeman Center of Excellence and a dramatic presentation at NEPAC. All events, which is important, members of the press, all events will be streamed live on the Culturama Committee's YouTube and Facebook pages, and also on NTV8 and NTV's social media pages. The Soca Monarch Finals and the Senior Kaiso Finals will be streamed pay-per-view, and all other events will be streamed for free. All events organized by the Nevis Culturama Committee will be staged at the David Freeman Center of Excellence in Market Shop in Gingerland. The pre-events will begin this weekend with the Soca Monarch tent on Saturday the 28th August and a Senior Kaiso tent on Sunday, August 29th, also at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. On the weekend of September 3rd and 4th, respectively, will be the Soca Monarch semifinals and the Senior Kaiso semifinals, all at the David Freeman Center of Excellence. And let me reiterate, say again, repeat, that all events are virtual. That is important because, as I said, we have had to shift from a position initially of having events that would have some persons in attendance to having events now which are entirely virtual. Sugar Mass was done in St. Kitts last year virtually, and we therefore know that it can be done and can be done successfully. I would want to wish the Culturama Committee, our hard-working minister, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, and his team, all the very best as they try to stage this watered-down, or perhaps not watered-down, scaled-down version. Watered down and sounds pejorative. So I would say scaled-down version of Culturama. So there will be no jamming, there will be no crowds, there will be no attendance. But we hope that people will choose to jam in their living room and in their bedroom as they watch online and as they get these various events streamed for free. And certainly we hope that they will be willing to pay for the Soca Monarch Finals and the Kaiso Finals. I will leave it there. It is now almost 11 o'clock, so I've been speaking for a little bit, and I will invite questions from members of the press. Thank you all very much.
Good morning, Devon Cornelius, WinFM. Just a few questions. Can you provide an update on negotiations with the one and only resort? Can you also provide an update on the expansion of the Alexandra Hospital? And lastly, what is the NIA doing with respect to public relations damage control or reputation protection after the damning investigation involving a senior figure in a prominent offshore bank in Nevis? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. The one and only resort, the update that I can provide is that we continue in discussions with the developer. The developer has the responsibility of raising the necessary capital in order to execute this particular project. We have had ongoing discussions to our team. I believe that I would have explained in the past that the structure is a company has been set up, and that company has some representation from government as well as the developer. And the idea is that we have to have consensus going forward in terms of the financing. And so the developer has, I'm advised, until the end of the year to identify and finalize financing for this particular project, and we hope that they can do so. So that is the timetable that we're working with, and the anticipation is that we'll be able to proceed with this development in the Indian Castle area for the benefit of the people of Nevis. The hospital, I got an update because I anticipated that you might ask about it, and I'm told that the consultants that had been hired, that they have provided the necessary drawings, preliminary drawings for both floors of the hospital, and that those, remember now that we're talking about the interior space. I had explained on a previous press conference that what we were seeking to do was to get a better understanding of how best to utilize the interior space. And so I'm told that that work is done, the consultations with them, that those consultations are ongoing. And the message that I got from the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health this morning is that while she couldn't give me a precise date, she knows that the construction will restart soon. And so we expect, therefore, that the contractors whom have already been met with, that they will be back on the job very soon to deal with the interior space and to get our hospital finalized after some delay and setbacks. You asked about damage control, and in relation, you said to a prominent figure. I'm not so sure who you mean specifically, but what I will say is that, of course, we have a regulatory department which controls what happens in the financial services sector. Nevis has been a player in the financial services sector since 1984. And we therefore have a cadre of professionals here, and a very highly qualified, highly skilled, and highly able cadre of professionals at the regulatory department who I believe are competent to manage any situation that might arise. There are a number of allegations that are swirling. It is not for me to get into those. I would hope you would respect that, because I'm told that there are matters that are before the court, and there are charges and counter-charges that are being made. My job is to ensure that Nevis and its reputation remains pristine as it has always been, and that our financial sector remains sacrosanct. And so we have been doing the necessary work, working with the various institutions on Nevis to ensure that the reputation of those institutions, the reputation of the island of Nevis, and the reputation of our professionals who are engaged here, and of course the safety and security of our depositors and those customers and investors in Nevis, that all of that is assured. As I said, I'm not at liberty to get into a lot of what I'm seeing in the press, because of course as Minister of Finance I have to take the necessary advice from the regulators and be guided by them as we seek to ensure that Nevis is protected. What I will say to you is that the public can be assured that my priority and the priority of the regulation department, the priority of our legal advisor and our legal team, is to ensure that the reputation of Nevis is protected. And that at every step we would have done what is necessary to ensure that we are protected, the health and viability of our financial services sector is protected, and our depositors and investors, that they are protected. And so that is as much as I can say in relation to the rather vague question that you asked. So I've answered you as best as I can. Are there any more questions for me, please?
Good morning to you, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
And good morning to all. With a high number of 79 cases that are active, are there enough space to house all these cases at government quarantine facilities? Question 2. The introduction of e-vaccination cards are mentioned this week by Federal Minister of Health, the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet on St. Kitts. Will there be a specific location on Nevis for persons to acquire theirs on Nevis? And I know that the government, and in particular the Ministry of Health, has been pleading to the public to adhere to the COVID-19 protocols. Seeing that there is a major increase of cases on Nevis, currently, a number of persons are still failing to wear their masks, or some are wearing under their chin, and they're being seen around Charlestown or even in some of the business places. What are the security forces planning to do about this? And are the police really issuing tickets for the non-wearing of masks? Thank you.
Okay, you've asked me quite a few questions. Let me try and respond. What are we doing about people breaching the protocols? The law is very clear that there are penalties for breaching the protocols. That individuals who are walking about town and engaging in public spaces at the stores, etc., who are not wearing the mask or wearing it improperly, because we actually went into Parliament to amend it to make it clear what mask wearing was, because some felt if you had it around your neck, you can't get a ticket because you're wearing the mask. So I saw somebody refer to it as a nose covering, and I thought that was an interesting way to say it, because the mask should, as you're wearing yours, cover your nose and mouth. And unless I be accused by members of the public, I'm not wearing a mask because I'm distant from the members of the press. So I want to make that very clear. But the police should issue the tickets. That's really what should happen. And the police have indicated that they have, in fact, been issuing tickets. So I know, because sometimes people call me and say, oh, I get a ticket for $500 and whatever. And I say, well, if you've got a ticket, you have to pay it. If you don't pay it, then you go to the magistrate and you make your case to the magistrate. There's nothing that I can do in relation to that, because the police have their job to do. So it really is for the security forces. St. Kitts, they have the compliance team that goes around. Nevis has been reliant on the police as the security force. And of course, we hope that in the fullness of time, we can have a full rollout of the compliance teams over here as well. But for now, we're reliant on our police to issue the necessary tickets and to ensure that people do the right thing. But beyond that, we are also appealing to people to do the right thing. You know, a man, maybe this is not the best example, but I will use it anyway. A man who has a number of children shouldn't need the court to tell him or to support those children. Yes, the court can tell him and force him and even put him in jail, but it shouldn't require that, because he should understand that it is the right thing to do. And I believe our people should not always require somebody to come running behind them, cracking a whip, running behind them, threatening them with some kind of fine or penalty for them to do the right thing. Masks. You know the first response of my government to COVID? We went to every household on the island of Nevis and handed out masks, reusable masks. No other government in the region did that. That was our first response. So that the idea that people can say, oh, they don't have a mask or they don't, it's really not an idea that really, to my mind, makes sense at this point. We have gone further, and we now have masks being manufactured on Nevis in bulk. The surgical masks that you're wearing now, I hope those were made here in Nevis, Mr. Cornelius and Mr. Utley, that they were made here, because masks are now being manufactured in Nevis, good quality. As we have tried to diversify our local economy and encourage and incentivize more local entrepreneurship, this is one of the products that has emerged, where we're producing masks here, beautifully made, beautifully packaged. I believe P.S. Daniel's mask does look Nivision. That one for sure should have been made here. So there's really no excuse. But I'm also going to go a step further. and urge our businesses to be responsible as well. And I want to single out a particular business. Maybe it is not always right that I do so, but I can only do the best that I can. And I had to go to Ram's supermarket recently, and I was impressed. Because at the door, they were taking your temperature, they were taking a note of all who were going in, taking the details. They even had multiple pens. So if you went ahead of me and you used the first pen, they came, they wiped that pen, and they gave me a different pen. I mean, to me, that's a business that is taking this thing seriously. You go to some other businesses, and it looks like they themselves are saying, well, it's a free-for-all. Whoever may want to come, let them come. And what is the result of that? The result of that is that whenever there is a case and the contact tracing leads back to that business, what happens? Business shut down. So it is really even in the business's best interest to tell people, listen, if you don't have on a mask, I'm sorry, you can't come in. I have been to some businesses, I will confess, and I jumped out of my car, forgot my mask in the car, and as I walked up, you get the guard or whoever the security wave, you say, no, can't come in. Go back to the car, get your mask. That, to my mind, is what should happen. So the businesses themselves need to be firm about their business, because it is also about the security of their business. And the continuity, you hear when I mentioned the statistics, I said one company here shut down. All now they're still shut down. When are they going to reopen? We don't even know. Imagine the losses to that company. Loss of income. The losses in terms of employment. Those families that depend on that income. The company is a large company here having diverse interests. So imagine you, that your business was dependent on that company to supply something to you. But that means your business now have to stop as well, because the supply isn't there. This is why I'm asking our people to think about the impact of our actions and to act responsibly. So I'm calling on people to wear their mask. I'm calling on businesses to enforce the protocols. I'm calling on our police and compliance teams to issue the necessary tickets. And I'm hopeful that our people do not have to be forced to do something to protect themselves. Their own good sense and sense of responsibility should encourage them to do the right thing. Very important question you posed. You said we have 79 cases, and do we have enough space at the government facilities? The short answer is no. The short answer is no. We do not have enough space at our government facilities. And just like on St. Kitts, where the cases started to escalate and went beyond the capacity of the government to host them, we have engaged in a selection process. Essentially, what I gather is happening is that those who are positive, but whose homes are such that they can be isolated in their home, that we are allowing those to stay at home. Those whose homes are not so situate, we are requiring them to go into government quarantine. And where, for example, whole families, as in one of my constituency families, where the husband, wife, and 2 children, we have put all 4 into isolation at a government facility. So we are really doing now a best case judgment in terms of interview, inspection, and determining who we need to isolate in government facility and who we feel can remain at their homes and who we hope will be responsible, because we simply have no choice now. The numbers have escalated. In an emergency meeting of our cabinet held last week, when we heard from Dr. Nisbet, we took a decision that all individuals had to be removed from their homes and put into government quarantine. We have had to revise that in light of the numbers. We simply do not have enough space to accommodate everyone. And as a result, we're now doing, as I say, a selective process. So that's where we are now. Of course, as people start to recover and as we hope cases start to go down, then we will be in a much better position to revert to the original position of having everyone back in government quarantine. Are there any more questions, members of the press?
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good
LK
morning.
Hewlett, Department of Information. The COVID pandemic has basically decimated government revenues across the globe, especially the smaller islands are really grappling with that issue. What can you say about the NIA's revenue, or rather, the debt situation as it is presently? Also, I know the Minister of Education federally, Mr. Janelle Powell, would have made an address last night. Unfortunately, I only got the link this morning, so I'm not sure what he said. But what is the NIA's plan for the school reopening and for the vaccination of 12-year-olds to 18 to 17-year-olds, especially in light of the fact that education is governed by the federal government?
Let me start with your second question. First, as currently advised, school reopening remains on track. That's the last information that I got. However, I can say that we are looking at it very, very closely, and with rising alarm as cases continue to increase. We now see more of our school-aged children being afflicted with COVID. And this is a trend that we see as well in the United States and elsewhere, where we're told that pediatric wards now in the United States are being overwhelmed by the number of children who have COVID. It appears that the Delta strain is particularly virulent and is attacking our children. And so we have to look very carefully at not putting our children in harm's way. So as I speak to you, the information that I have is that the reopening of schools remains on target, but that can change depending on the situation on the ground. COVID has taught us one thing, and that is that we have to be agile, we have to adjust. And so we have, of course, the option of going virtual. We have the option of going partially virtual and partially in person. We have the option of the shift system that we had before, or our preference would be to have children back in school in the normal course. In terms of vaccinating children 12 to 17-year-olds, the Pfizer rollout, we hope, will begin on September 1. And we are hopeful, as I said at the start of this press conference, that our parents will be willing to allow their children to be vaccinated, and that those teenagers would be able to get access to the Fisa vaccine, which, as we know, has been formally cleared for those 16 and up, but the advice from the health authorities, including from the FDA, CDC and others, that it can also be used for those 12 and up. So we are hopeful that parents will allow their children to be vaccinated, and that will help immensely. That, however, doesn't answer the question of the primary schools, because there is no vaccine currently on the market for primary school age children. So those children will still have to be dependent on their parents being vaccinated and therefore safe, and their teachers and caregivers at the schools being vaccinated and therefore safe. And so we are looking to see how all these bits and pieces can come together as we work together to overcome this difficulty. If we truly believe that our children are our most important resource, then all those involved in their care should be responsible and ensure that our children are protected. You mentioned the NIA debt. Let me just see if I can give some quick synopsis. The NIA debt has increased, Ms. Hewlett, and I believe that the circumstances of that increase are well known. With our revenue base decimated, my government has been forced to borrow, and I'm not going to shy away from that. Of course, high debt is never attractive. We always prefer to have a situation of low debt, but in the circumstances, it is through debt that we've been able to continue to pay our public servants, continue to do and to make available the services that the government is required to make available. With our revenue decimated by COVID and the closure of our main industry, which is tourism, we have been forced to borrow. And so over the past year and a half or thereabouts, we have had to borrow more than usual, and therefore our debt has increased. To put it in context, the debt in 2006 was $230.8 million. We had at that time Mr. Joseph Parry and the Nevis Reformation Party were at the helm of government. They held government until 2013, and they took the debt from $230.8 million to $389.71 million. That was an increase in our debt stock of $158.91 million, or $26.49 million per year. That was the period 2006 to 2013. So the debt again in 2006 was $230.8 million, and I'm talking about a global debt. Just let me explain. When I say debt, I'm talking about the debt of the government, but also the debt of all the statutory corporations. So NEVLEC, NASPA, Nevis Tourism Authority, NHLDC, all the various entities. So that global debt figure was at $230.8 million, and this is EC dollars, in 2006. 6 years later, it was at $389.71 million, an increase of $158.91 million, or $26.49 million per year, as the debt was aggregated. In 2013, there was a change of government. Mr. Vance Amry took over with the Concerned Citizens Movement team here on the island of Nevis. The debt moved from 2013 to 2017 from $389.71 million to $415.66 million, an increase of $25.95 million over the course of those 5 years. The government continued from 2017, CCM administration, and I took over from Mr. Amry as the leader and as the Premier and Minister of Finance. And under my administration, the debt has moved from $415.66 million in 2017 to $489.1 million as of June of 2021, an additional $74.03 million in debt. It therefore means that under the CCM administration, from 2013 to 2021, we have added some $99.39 million in debt in 8.5 years, or $11.69 million per year. So, I believe that that is the debt position, and I've taken you from 2006 to 2021 June. The situation is sober. It is a situation which we cannot ignore. But in the circumstances, I believe that the option was to start to lay off workers, start to do as we saw in other countries where public servants were being paid, some in cash and some in IOU, and we thought that that was not appropriate. And so we have tried our very best to pay people on time and in full, and to continue to offer the services. And I believe it is for you members of the press and the public to judge. But I believe that absent, or let me not put it that way, despite the economic challenges and despite the downturn, that particularly our public servants and the government services have continued and have been maintained at a particular standard here on the island of Nevis for the period that we've been under the throes of this pandemic. I will just remind members of the press and the public that we started experiencing the worst of this pandemic in March of 2020. And for the first time in our history, our country was closed. Closed. Borders closed. No flights in. Hotels closed. No tourists. Restaurants closed. Bars closed. Taxis parked up. Never in the history of our island and in our country have we had that experience. And I believe it is a miracle that I'm standing here before you today in August of 2021, that all of our public servants have continued to be paid on time and in full. All of our pensioners have continued to be paid on time and in full, and we have been able to keep the lights on. I want to thank our bankers because they have stood with us through this difficult period. And we know that better days lie ahead. And it is our expectation that we will be able to deal with the debt at a time when we are able to deal with the economic expansion that we anticipate, which will come. And so that is where we are in relation to debt, and I trust and hope, Ms. Hewlett, that I've provided you with a fulsome explanation of where we are from 2006 until now. Are there any other questions for me, please?
Good morning, I am Mr. Hanley of the Black Home channel, and you can find us on YouTube. On Saturday, the leader of the NRP, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, presented a comprehensive plan for the future development of Nevis. Mr. Brantley, you have been in Parliament for almost 20 years. You have been a minister in Nevis for almost 10 years, a federal minister for over 5 years, and Premier of Nevis for almost 5 years. In light of this, can you use 2 minutes of your time to give us your plan for the development of Nevis? Question number 2. We are facing a COVID-19 crisis, but while countries around the world are presenting stimulus packages, we are yet to receive one for Nevis. In light of this, can you use 2 minutes of your time to give us your stimulus package for struggling small businesses and the unemployed? Question number 3. In recent times, the NIA has received over $300 million in stimulus funds from the federal government. There are still a number of incompleted projects on Nevis. In light of this, Mr. Premier, can you give us the start date, the exact start date for the hospital project, the amount of money spent so far, and the date when it will be completed? Question number 4. Several non-established government workers who are nearing retirement are concerned about their pension plan. The question is, can you give us an update on the pension plan for non-established government workers on Nevis? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. I think all excellent questions. Let me start where you ended, the any workers' pension plan. It is a vexed issue. It is a matter that I know has been talked about quite a bit. We have discussed it because this is something that has to be done nationally, federally. We have discussed it at the federal cabinet for some time. I believe that the public will recall that legislation was passed since under the previous Denzel Douglas-led administration to try and regularize the position of the any workers. I think on Sinkis they call them auxiliary workers. Over here we say non-established workers. But the legislation having been passed, nothing else was done. And so a big part of the question that we've had to deal with is how do you fund it? Most pension arrangements have a payment component where there's a contribution that is being made. And clearly, the non-established workers would not have been making a contribution, financial contribution to any pension, because the terms of their employment were that there is no pension available to them. There was never a pension plan. Most non-established workers at the end of each year get what is called an honorarium, which is sort of a top-up payment that they get each year, that civil servants normally would not get. Civil servants would usually only get when the fiscal position admits a double salary sometimes, as you know, or 50% bonus salary. But that is not every year, and that doesn't happen that often. So the truth is that we have to do more work in relation to this. The piece of the puzzle that we have not yet been able to solve is the funding. of the plan for the non-established workers. So I would want to assure you and the non-established workers that we have not forgotten them. We have not forgotten about the commitment that has been made to them. But the issue that we're grappling with is how do we fund a pension arrangement for them, many of whom are now nearing retirement but have not themselves contributed to any kind of pension plan because there was no pension plan in place for them to contribute to. So it's not their fault. It's simply that this was the basis on which they were hired. So that is a matter that I believe is a work in progress, and I would hope that as time goes on, I could come and give you more accurate information. You asked me for a specific date when the hospital project will restart. When I spoke earlier, I had indicated that the latest report that I had from the permanent secretary was that the consultants whom I've spoken about here at this press conference and whom we have hired, that those consultants have done the interior work thus far for both floors, and the necessary meetings have been had with the contractors. She could not give me a specific date. She did indicate, however, that we intend to restart soon. As soon as I can have a specific date, I know you like specificity, I certainly will make that available to you. But as I stand here today, I don't want to tell you the 1st of September and then that date slips, because what I was told was soon. They could not give me a specific date when I got updated before coming here. You asked about a stimulus package, and you say that there has been no stimulus package by the NIA. That is, in fact, not accurate. The truth is that this government has really tried its very best with its meager resources, and that is why I took some time to go through the debt situation so that the public could have an appreciation of where we are in terms of our finances on the island. We have, as an island, as part of the Federation, benefited from a number of stimulus initiatives. We, for example, had the income substitution initiative that was done for Social Security, where many people got $1,000 per month for 3 months. That was done here in Nevis. That was done on the island of St. Kitts, administered through Social Security. And I know many people on Nevis benefited because I received the calls from many of them, and we helped many of them to sort themselves out and to get that benefit. We have, in relation to the island of Nevis, granted massive concessions to our farmers as we try to incentivize agriculture. I have gone to them time and time again. We provided free water. We provided free fertilizer. We provided free land preparation. We provided free fencing wire. We provided even labor to assist our farmers. We provided them with as much support as we could in the circumstances. To our fishers, we provided them with free fish pot wire. We provided them with additional rolls at 50% discount. We provided our livestock farmers with free feed. We lowered the charges at the abattoir because we decided that we had to make a pivotal shift to have greater food security as part and parcel of our response. I remember it was in this very room where the cabinet meets that the discussion was what happened, what would happen, because we didn't know what to expect if tropicals stopped coming from Miami. If the port of Miami was closed, what would happen to our food supply? And we took that early decision as a Nevis Island administration that we would provide a stimulus to our farmers and to our agricultural sector to be able to ensure that we have greater food production and food security. And I'm pleased that it is unprecedented what we did, because we provided not only to our commercial farmers but also to our backyard farmers. So if you were doing a little farming in your backyard, you also got things like free seedlings and fertilizer, etc., to help you. We did a number of other things in relation to construction, Mr. Hanley. I believe as you drive around Nevis now, as I like to do on a Sunday afternoon sometimes, and I go up the back roads and the byways and the highways, go through the alleys and some of the footpaths that you see, there is a tremendous amount of construction that is happening on Nevis. And I want people to understand it didn't happen just so. It happened in part because the government took a deliberate decision to provide a stimulus to persons interested in constructing. And so any construction, we said that was over $30,000, received duty-free, received VAT off, receive various concessions. And so a lot of people have responded positively to that. And we were playing, of course, the long game because we understood that if people moved forward their plans to build as a result of stimulus that was being offered, then it means that our contractors would be working and our construction workers, a critical backbone of our economy, would be working. And I believe that most of them, our plumbers, our electricians, our masons, our carpenters, have been out there working. We have not stopped there. Despite the difficulties, we have started the Butler's Road. We are due to start the Bath Road. And the relevance of that is that we understand that even in big countries such as the United States, if you look at President Biden's plan, Just on Earth, it's about infrastructural improvement. Why? Because each state, as they build out bridges and roads, generates economic activity in that state. Similarly here, not on the scale, we don't have that kind of money. But who's working on the Butler's Road? Locals, local contractors, local masons, local engineers, local backhoes and trucks. That is also part of the stimulus that we have sought to provide. We have assisted small businesses. We have rolled out a $5 million program to assist businesses that are owned by women and by youth. And that program that is administered through SIDU has shown good success thus far. We provide training through what we call a series of boot camps, and then we provide financing up to 100,000 EC dollars to some of these small businesses. And again, quite a few people have benefited. So a lot of people who say, listen, I want to do a little food catering business. I need to buy 2 stoves. I need to buy a pizza oven. I need to buy a little van to get around to deliver what I'm making. We did something the other day where some people are going to be growing, I think it was mushrooms, something that I had not thought of, but which of course is a delicacy and is used in the hotels, etc. We have, again, incentivized our small business sector. In relation to agriculture, just going back there, Mr. Hanley, because I'm very proud of the achievements and the activities of our Deputy Premier in that regard, we have identified some of the farmers in Nevis who have been using technology in terms of the shade house technology. They have shown great success thus far. You know what we did? We gave them 6 farmers were identified, and we gave them additional shade houses, valued, I believe, each at $60,000. That's a direct stimulus to those farmers to tell them, listen, here's an additional shade house to increase your capacity, increase your production, provide more food for the people of Nevis. That, again, is part of the stimulus program that we have put in place. In relation to our people, we provided relief at Nevlec. We provided relief at the water department. Even now, we say to our people, if you're having difficulty paying your water bill, paying your Nevlec bill, please go in and talk to them. Because the instruction that has come forth from my cabinet to those agencies is to work with people. Nevlec has a saying they prefer to collect than to disconnect. And I say to people all the time, rather than letting your bill get out of control, go in and pay something. Demonstrate that you're willing to work with them. And don't wait until they cut you off to start to panic, but go in. So we have been doing those things. We have not had the resources to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at the problem, because remember, while we're doing all this, our revenue is down by over 20% because our main engine, the tourism industry, is offline. We continue to have to find money to retool in terms of our hospital and our healthcare facility. Just this morning, in speaking to the Permanent Secretary in Health, we are having a real difficulty, Mr. Hanley and members of the press, dealing with the cost of the COVID testing. Because remember, when we have contact tracing, and we start to talk about 500 and something tests being done, all the PPE, the swabs, all of that, we have to fund. And we have to pay the labs in St. Kitts for the tests. Because remember, if you're contact traced, you are not the one paying for the tests. The taxpayer is paying for the tests for you. So that again is millions and millions of dollars that we have been forced to find. And that is why I was so pleased to announce today that we now have our own PCR equipment, PCR testing equipment, and we hope in short order to be able to do some testing here. It will be a tremendous cost saving for us. So we've had this sort of attack, if you will, on our financial situation from all sides. Reduced revenue because the economy is down, major engines are closed off, airport closed, lockdown, etc. We have had to find money to do things like, simple as it sounds, pay for testing, retool, ensure we have PPE stocks. A lot of money that was intended to go elsewhere, we have had to been forced to put it into health. So that has been the situation. Your last question, you ask, what is happening in relation, you said $300 million has come from the federal government in stimulus. I don't think that that's quite accurate. We have an arrangement that is in place for Nevis to get a small share of the CBI proceeds. And that money has come in tranches to do various things. You indicated that projects remained outstanding. I believe the only project that I can point to in Nevis at this point that is not complete is the hospital project. All the other projects have been completed. The last one to be completed and opened was the Newcastle police station. Now, of course, we have committed to doing more work, for example, the stadium at the Mondo Track, and we have committed to doing the reception area at the Oali Pier. But that was a second project, if you will, a second phase. So it's not correct to say that the Oali Pier is not finished. It is, and it's in use. So really the hospital project is the project that remains outstanding, and certainly, as I tried to update this morning, as I have more information, I will bring that information to you. The question of what is our plan? I believe that if we are fair, we will all acknowledge that it has been a difficult period for every government anywhere in the world. When I say the great United States of America, the greatest country the world has ever known, brought to its knees by COVID, Italy, India, the United Kingdom, you wonder how little Nevis is still standing. So people talk about plans. Our plans have had to be continually adjusted. Even as I speak and I'm asked today, something that is so fundamental to people, will schools reopen? My response, that is a plan for now. But I can't even tell you what's going to happen next week. Because that is the reality. That is what COVID has done to us. It has torn plans asunder and forced us to retool and replan. But what have we been doing? We have tried to stimulate growth in agriculture and feeding ourselves. I think the evidence suggests that we have succeeded in doing that, and we will continue to press. I spoke of the construction sector. The activity there is clear, and I believe that too, our efforts there have been a success. I reported to the press, I believe it was at the last press conference, that through our stimulus to the real estate industry and market, having been approached by realtors, we removed the alien landowner license fee for a period of 9 months, and we saw $70 million worth of real estate move in that period. So we think that that was a success. In relation to our small business development, I have spoken about the $5 million arrangement facilitated through the Taiwanese that we've continued to disburse small loans, seed money to develop small businesses. We have developed a movie industry from scratch. And I, in my introduction, pointed out that we've had 3 feature films thus far, filmed entirely here in Nevis, and a 4th that is due to start next month. I believe that one is called Christmas in the Caribbean. We have continued to spend from a government point of view in terms of public infrastructure projects. I can think of the Butler's Road. I can think of the Bass Road that we hope to start soon. I can think of things like the Chill Center that was completed up at the the agricultural facility there at Prospect. I can think of the work that is even now ongoing at the government garage. There have been a number of public infrastructural projects. And of course, the Nevis Housing and Land Development Corporation continues itself. I'm pleased, and I believe again as we drive around, to see that construction has started on the new project at the top of Craddock Road. And as we bring relief to the people of St. Paul's, of more housing, we will see construction start soon at Hamilton as well on a new development there. Is the glass full? Mr. Handy, the answer is a resounding no. But I believe that on balance, this island has fared well through the grace of God and through the sober leadership and management of our resources that we have had over the past period. I end with this punctuation mark: that no government in the history of our island, in the history of our country, none has ever had to deal with something quite on the scale and quite as devastating as the COVID-19 pandemic. And I believe that every question that is posed when we talk about performance in this environment has to be prefaced and has to be asked in that context. No government in the history of this island, no premier, from our national hero, Sir Simeon, to myself now holding this office, has ever had to deal with that until now. None. Not before independence, not since. The last pandemic we had was the influenza pandemic. That ended when, I think, 1918. So it's been a full century, a full 100 years since anybody has had to deal with this. So while I hear sometimes the criticisms, and we live in a democracy, that's expected. In fact, it is welcomed. Sometimes you learn a lot when you listen to your critics. But while I listen sometimes to the criticisms, I wonder if some of those who are doing the criticizing, if they were in the position now, what would they have done? Because there's no blueprint. You couldn't go on Google and say how to deal with a pandemic. It's not there. Have mistakes been made? Obviously. One minute you're told, you remember we were told that ventilators were the way to go. Everybody was scrambling to get ventilators. Then they started to say, well, maybe they're not so important after all. You heard a hoopla about this medicine can work and that medicine, then slowly, no. You heard about the vaccines and then the different types of vaccines. The reality is that this has been a change in landscape, and we have had to be adaptive, we have had to be agile, and I believe that it is a credit to this government that Nevis is still afloat. I wish that we were flying high, and I do hope that those days will return. But for now, I think that we all ought to be grateful that we are afloat, and that at this juncture, despite the surge in cases, we have only had one hospitalization as of this morning. We pray for that person's safe recovery, and we've had no deaths to this dreaded COVID-19 disease. When you look around our region and look at all of our neighbors, I believe that that is truly remarkable. So I will leave that there and say that the plan for our development is all around us because we are all experiencing it. We're doing, we're not just talking. Are there any more questions for me?
Shamika Budgeon, Vaughan Radio, and these are my last two questions. Will the curfew hours be readjusted in order to slow down the progress of COVID-19? I know that a new statutory rules and order just came in place. Would it be readjusted? And how much revenue has been generated from the movie industry thus far? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Budgeon. The curfew readjusted, I can't answer that today. What I can tell you is that the cabinet would have met at the federal level on Monday, and we met really on the only item was this whole issue of COVID and our response. Based on the advice that we had prior to this upsurge, it was to relax. The Prime Minister indicated, and I think all of us were of one accord, that there would be a slow relaxation. So you realize we had 14 days quarantine, and we went to, I think, 9, and we're down to 4, and the next iteration should have reduced it further. The quarantine, the curfew, was at 6 p.m., then it went to 8 p.m., then 11 p.m., and then 1 a.m. So it was consistent with that we were proceeding. But of course, we sometimes have to adjust. So the new SRNO would have gone out, and we now have to look at it closely, look at the situation on the ground, and make a determination as to where we go. I cannot prejudge that. I can tell you that my cabinet here in Nevis has a particular view on this matter, and that this is a view that will be ventilated at the federal cabinet when we sit there again, God willing, on Monday to look and see what we do. In the meantime, we're looking at the numbers and hopeful that we start to see a downward spiral of those numbers rather than the upward trajectory that we have had thus far. But I can't tell you definitively at this moment that the curfew will be this or that. What I can say at this moment is that there is no appetite for a lockdown, and that the experts at this point are not advising that we go into a full lockdown, because the experience has shown us that when we go into a full lockdown, that the economy suffers naturally, people suffer, but when we come out of the lockdown, unfortunately, people go back to the same habits. So what we're trying to do now is to see how we could change habits, how we could encourage our people to wear their masks, as you have done throughout this press conference, how we can encourage our people to act responsibly, to get vaccinated, to protect our children, to protect our elderly. That is what we're seeking to do. In relation to revenue generated thus far, I wish I had anticipated that question. I would have tried to get some statistics. I don't. I can't. What I will say to you is that over the course of the first 3 films, we had about 80 people employed. And as I said, there was a hiatus, and the MSR folks are now back on Nevis and ready to start their 4th feature film here on the island. And we are aware that a number of our local people have been engaged. And so I will certainly try to get a dollar value for you on the next occasion, but at this point I do not have that. But I can say that when we look at the fact that Hamilton, what's it called? Hamilton Resort, for example, the property at the bottom of Cotton Ground, that resort, for example, was practically sold out to the MSR people. They had, I think, 20 plus units there rented to them long term. You have rent cars rented from various agencies. You see them on the road who have been rented, which have been rented, long term. You have homes and villas rented all across the island, which have been taken again long term. And you have the spend in terms of restaurants, you have the spend in terms of the bars, you have the spend on salaries and social security contributions, all of which are part and parcel of our effort as a government to bring some economic life back to the island of Nevis. So while I don't have a precise dollar value, I think that the benefits are clear in terms of developing this industry into something that can become, here on the island of Nevis, very significant, and a very significant diversification away from our monocrop of tourism that we have had and depended on for so long. So I trust and hope that that gives you at least a partial answer to your question. Are there any other questions for me? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It has been a good almost 2 hours with you. I want to thank the members of the press who are here, BHC Media, VON Radio, Win FM, and of course NTV for your contribution. And to look out for the next press conference, thank you to VON Radio for carrying this live, for NTV for carrying it live, and I believe we are carrying live in St. Kitts as well, still, to Freedom FM for carrying us live as well. So, thank you very much, and we look forward, of course, to engaging with you on the next occasion. Thank you. God bless you.